one, fight! Round one, fight! Round one. Fight. Round one. Fight. Fight. Fight! Fight! Round 1. Fight! Fight! Round one. Fight. Round one. Fight. Round one. Fight.
The corner! 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 The corner!
Fight.
Achoo!